I'm going to make a short tutorial here on using symmetry mode. So let's drop a sphere into the scene. And we're going to add segments to it to just get a little bit more geometry here. And keeping an eye on this front view, we're going to add enough segments that, let's say 28, no, let's go back to 28, so that the center line, center segment lies right along this y coordinate. That's so when we split this in half, we can do so cleanly. Now let me demonstrate how symmetry works. So with my object selected, I'm going to go to the generator palette and drop in symmetry, so that the sphere is now a child of symmetry. If I then activate the sphere and make sure that it has been made editable by tapping C, activate the sphere, and we'll go with live selection. Now I'll rotate around here to see this along the x-axis and just select a few of those spheres, and then I will tap D to extrude, and as I extrude it out, you can see that what I do on the one side is mirrored on the other side. Problem with this is that if I then go in and select a bunch of polygons here and delete them, you can see that there's another sphere inside, and so that is not a condition that we want to work with. So what we're going to do is go back to the beginning, again making sure the sphere is selected, it's in editable mode. We're now going to select the rectangle selection, and we're going to draw out a marquee that just selects past the center line here without selecting any of these polygons at the top or bottom here, because we need to make certain that our edge is lined up right on that axis. We're going to delete those polygons. Now we're going to add symmetry to it so that it repeats it on the other side. And if we render this out, you can see that looks nice and smooth and complete. Keep in mind, however, that actually we have two separate objects here. If we activate the Move tool, you can see that they are not joined at this point. And you can also see why it's important that our center point here lie directly on that green axis. Otherwise, the form will not match up correctly when we unite the two of them. Okay. Now, another thing that I want to demonstrate to you is that notice that when I pull this apart, it's hollow on each side. That's what gives us a nice smooth junction here. However, if I did it this other way, so let's Z back to where I haven't deleted it yet, and I select the polygons, making sure poly mode is selected, and I use the dissolve function. Notice what happens. It places a polygon, an n-gon, here where the sphere used to be. Now you can just delete that, which you do need to do, because if you don't do that, and that polygon remains in there, then when you add the symmetry generator, it might look smooth here, but when we go to render it, we've got a visible seam right there. So if you ever get a situation like this where you are using symmetry and you either end up with a seam or you end up with the faces here slightly different colors. The reason for that is because you have, turn this off, it's because you've got a plane inside of here and you need to get rid of that. So if I select my sphere in this case and delete it, and then reactivate my symmetry, you'll see that I'm now back to a smooth rendered surface. So what I would recommend is, depending upon the circumstances, don't use dissolve or melt to get rid of the excess polygons. The problem with using delete is that now if we activate our point mode, you'll see that all the points are still there, because delete deletes the polygons but not the points, leaves the points behind. So rather than go in and marquee select all those and delete them manually, a faster method for doing it is to simply right mouse button click to bring up this menu and click on Optimize. That will remove all of the unnecessary or superfluous points. Now when we add our symmetry object, everything is hunky-dory. Now if we go to our sphere, activate polygon mode and live select and just select some polygons here. Now if we extrude those, notice it extrudes nicely and we don't have the problem of that inner sphere over here. Just take my word for it. Okay. Now the problem with that, as you may have seen, is that when I select these polygons and I extrude them tapping D using the extrude tool, notice that as I extrude, they expand both in the vertical direction and also in the horizontal direction. Now typically we don't want that to occur. Then the way to prevent that is to not use the extrude tool. Instead, hold down the Control key and drag out your polygons, and that will maintain a horizontal or consistent relationship based upon the axis direction of your scene. Now what if you want those polygons to extend out this way without expanding, but to go directly away from the sphere instead of in the angle that you see here? Well, you have to activate a different tool here. So let's do that. What we need to do is to align this work plane with that selection, or with the average of that selection. And we can do that by going over here, clicking on this one, and going down to Align Work Plane to Selection. Now notice how the work plane has shifted to align to an average of the normals of your polygons here. Now if you just pull this, it's just going to do it the same way as before. So what you also need to do is to go up here into the main toolbar and click on this axis toggle, which right now is set to object axis, and instead use the world coordinate system. And as you click on that, notice how now it is pointing directly away from your polygons, and you can extrude it out directly away from your selections. Now to get the work plane back to where it was, you just go back to this button again, hold it down, and align it to the Y work plane, and then it puts it back to where it was before. So there you have it. Hope that was helpful.